Hey, what is up, guys? This is Luke with Luke F1 Fantasy with my post free practice 2 video following end of day 1 at the Netherlands Grand Prix. So Zandvoort is up this week, and if you have been following along with the reports from practice today, the big question is it finally time to dump Ferrari off our F1 fantasy teams? And there may be good reason to do that. They have been looking slow over free practice 1 and free practice 2. Both drivers have called the car unpredictable and feel like they are nowhere near the top. And at 98% ownership in the Global 500, this is the week that a switch actually could move rank. So let's break it down. So the title, as we know, is Ferrari. Is it time to move on? Now, Ferrari, they have been our season backbone, safe constructor. They have given us steady rises, lots of points from pit stops, and overall decent performance. Not the reaching the heights of getting wins and constant poles and constant podiums, but generally they've been ticking along and giving us points, always in the sort of top 2 or top 3 in constructors. But this game has been getting a little bit copycatty, shall we say? So we have to take a gut check in with ourselves to understand, are we making this choice because they're just that bad and that's what the data is telling us? We just want some diversity. Now, diversity has been an issue for me and my F1 fantasy team, especially in the middle part of the season where I did go with the Norris over Piastri choice in Canada, which led to a Norris DNF. Mercedes took home the win that day, so I missed out on the Mercedes and the Russell as well and took a big loss in rank. And then myself personally, I also had the experience of going into an Aston build in Silverstone when they did look great in FP2 and FP3 and were looking like they were on the ascendance with some upgrades. But then the race came along, and as has been with Aston this year, they tend to do well in practices, qualify okay to semi-okay. Stroll sometimes has his more problems in quali than Alonso does. But generally, their race pace doesn't really tend to do too much for them, and especially in a rainy, coldy one in Silverstone, they definitely faded. So it wasn't the play for me then. But they have been humming around, and they did look great in Hungary as well. So I think that is why there is some hype in the fantasy chats and the community and the tweets. So let's just look into the evidence-based situation of this then and make sure that it is a decision we should make based on the data and not just from boredom. So why Aston then? This is going to be an Aston punt, and probably not as big of a risk as, say, mine was in Silverstone because they've got a bit more positive results behind them in the last couple races, but they have looked great in FP2, and Alonso is bullish coming out of the car on Friday. Normally he just plays down their potential chances, but Alonso called them out. He's like, all right, we're not going to challenge McLaren, but we're fighting with Mercedes and Red Bull. So he is calling them out and naming them. He's like putting it out there to be like, I am coming for you. So that is really interesting to see. One of the things he did spoke about in his post-race interview was that a lot of the things that they're seeing in their models in the factory is legit showing up on track when they get there. So they have got a really good system going on, probably quite the opposite of what Ferrari have got going on because they look absolutely clueless, probably a little bit of what Red Bull have as well. But the F1 models that they use, that Lawrence Barretto writes on, like they still have them as 5th best this weekend and still quite a way behind McLaren and Mercedes in both their qualifying and race pace. So I do have some cautions about Aston. I think they have looked great in these sessions. I think there's been a little bit of stop-starting in the sessions, a lot of experienced drivers like dipping a wheel into the gravel or just like dunking it into the barriers. Okay. So it is a track that I've known to be, it's narrow, so it's narrow especially for these type of Formula One cars that they have now, the size. And it's definitely, again, more of a qualifying track. So yeah, I definitely see the upside in Aston, but I definitely feel like their quali performance and their race performance has been not connected all year round. But it does come with the risk of the DNF as well. So one DNF and you are double cooked. And I think it amplifies this more. If Aston isn't the most dominantly owned second constructor this week, then you're gonna lose not only like when everyone's in the same boat at 98% ownership of any constructor, you win or lose the same. But when you choose one that's not, then you are putting yourself at risk for the big swings. So we all know the risk that comes with that, but that's putting it out there just so we can check ourselves on our information. And my verdict is, yeah, they're a fun differential. If they do well this week, could we be looking at keeping them next week here as a second constructor? So, is there a world where you consider Aston the constant best third or fourth constructor from here on out to the end of the year, knowing that Ferrari are flatlining, Red Bull are flatlining, something to consider. And then we have the case of Mercedes. Now, they are the safety pick. They have been the best Ferrari alternative all year. They give us solid baseline scoring. We know that Russell can do magic on a one lap. He can do magic in a race with rain. He can do magic in a chaos filled race. While the Astons look like they can challenge Mercedes, Ferrari, and a Red Bull, there is still that sneaky suspicion that Russell's probably the only driver in their race that could probably challenge the McLarens, or at least one of them. I think it's quite plausible that Russell can have a P2 and a McLaren sandwich, because I feel like if a Mercedes sort of gets itself up there with their race pace, I think they can hold off a McLaren. On the front row, I think a McLaren gobbles them up pretty quickly. Maybe looking at the safe, like more like the narrower error of margin with Mercedes over Aston. And part of me just thinks like just freeing up that extra budget may be useful. If Ferrari continue to do this and they don't show up and they drop down in their performance, then it is quite viable. Then we talk about the 4A strategy that actually we're going back to Mercedes as being the best second constructor. This could be jumping on the Mercedes meta build a little bit earlier, looking into all important team selections. So let's just explore those. So going into the week, we were considering that Ollie Behrman was a definite transfer out because of his DNF, so he still remains. And I think really at this point, the answer is quite simple. I need to put in a 4.5 million driver. And for me, that still is Khabib Bortoletta. I think the kick looks better this weekend. I still do see the upside in Liam Lawson as a budget gainer. I think he'll probably get teams that points. I'm just banking on the opposite for the moment and not putting Liam into my team. So I'm going with Bortoletta. I think he has the better chance for the increase as well. So with 3 transfers, I'll take out Ferrari. And the first option would be let's look at the Aston build. So this is the build that allows me to have 23.5 million in the bank, and taking out either of Berg or Stroll will get me the Lando upgrade. And that is really the beauty of the Aston build. So Aston not only could outscore Ferrari by being the third best constructor or the fourth best constructor this week, and probably will outscore the Ferrari, you're also able to bring in Norris, who's obviously going to outscore anyone else that you put in this position too. So that this is a reason why this lineup is very strong. You also have the chance to boost this, to super boost this particular lineup and play a chip on top of this, which would either be a 3X or an autopilot. If you're going the 3X, I'll definitely go with it on Norris over Piastri. And the autopilot also gives you that, just in case Alonso does end up having one of those good races where he does hit the podium and maybe he sneaks driver of the day as well. And if that has an opportunity to put him over a score of Piastri and Norris, then that also could help out too as well. So the autopilot does give us a little bit of wriggle room here. And it is a good time to play the autopilot. Autopilot also is probably going to be used on a week where you have 2 premium constructors, and on a week where you can afford a cheap constructor to be that third best constructor. This looks like a week to do it. So it is a very strong build. This is most likely the build I'm going to definitely play in the McLaren Mini League, because I don't have a limitless chip in that one. I actually have this team going into it, which was like I do have Aston as part of that team anyway, and I also already have the triple here too. So this team is really pretty much prime and set for the Mini League with putting autopilot on. So the question is whether I put it on my team. Could the other sort of alternative to the triple McLaren build would actually be something like this, where I drop down to a Mercedes from a Ferrari, taking out Behrman again, which would be my other move. From here, you could also just do the simple Bortoletto move, which also, again, gives me enough Aston Martin exposure with both Alonso and Stroll. It gives me the Mercedes and the Russell exposure with the constructor. and a possibility for a budget upgrade from Hulkenberg and Bortoleto. And sticking with Kick, who I do think are a strong car this week as well. So I'm basically doing a double Aston, a double Kick, and a Mercedes. So I was like spreading out a few of the assets that are doing quite well, but not putting all the eggs in one basket. Now, I do like this one from a sense of, like I said, that if my move going forward is to just say, I don't think Ferrari are going to be the best constructor for the second part of the season, and I think Mercedes are going to then take over, then this means that we're shifting the meta to something like this. What I do find interesting from this one is if I do take out these three drivers, leave in Bortoleto at 4.5, add back in Liam Lawson at 4.5. If I put in Lando, so I'm going with a triple McLaren with a Mercedes build, as you can see, I've got 0 million in the bank. So I need to build 4.5 million, and then I will be in a version of a 4A build with Lando and Oscar. And so if I can make up 4.5 million, give or take, in the next little bit, that I could potentially look at a position where the last 6 or 7 races, you've basically got a triple McLaren build, which I think the triple McLaren Mercedes build is the play to the Piastri, Russell, McLaren, Ferrari build. And I think it does somewhat give us some protection over the next few weeks, because while Bortoleto and Lawson are 4.5 and Colapinto, we do have assets such as Isaac Hadjar and Carlos Sainz, who are trending down to being around 5 million, 4.5 million, even Pierre Gasly as well. So we are going to be having a plethora of 4.5 million assets to sort of keep switching in and out as and when we need to. So again, in summary, it's going to come down to free practice 3, certainly looking at Aston's performance. Can Ferrari improve? If Aston are beating Ferrari, give a 1 point to Aston. But if Mercedes are still looking strong and decent around them, then I might still hint towards the Mercedes side. So drop your comments below. Is it time to dump Ferrari? Are you going to stick with the meta? Are you going with the Aston route? Are you going to go with a shift to Mercedes? And we will wish you all the best of luck with your teams this weekend, and we will catch you at the beginning of next week for a race review. Have a good one. Cheers.